Hello and welcome to the Life Waves practice. My name is Sarah Bainbridge and I'm passionate about helping you achieve total well-being in our modern world, helping you to feel fabulous. What I want to talk to you today about is acidity. So with the type of approach that I take to treatment here at the practice, acidity is actually considered to be one of the 5 main causal factors in ill health. All ill health, regardless of what it is. So we have acidity. Other ones include dehydration, environmental toxins, the effect that those have on you, EMFs and the effect that those have, and also geostress. And the idea is that if you have one or more of these things affecting you, then you set up the conditions in the body that allows ill health to develop. So in other words, it disrupts the homeostatic balance. When you come into contact with things like pathogens, viruses, bacteria, parasites even, the body's less able to cope, so you develop symptoms. So as you can see, hopefully from that, acidity is a really important factor in our health and general well-being. But possibly, like all those other things that I've just talked about, it's really under-considered. It's not thought about at all. And it's a real issue for our health. So, and perhaps the thing to say is why I'm talking about it with regards to this Eat Yourself Well month, is that acidity, using your diet is a really easy way to control that acidity. It's one of the ways that you're gaining acidity in the body, but it's a really easy way that you can bring that acidity down. So a little bit about what I mean by acidity in the body. What am I talking about? Well, acidity, the body has a certain pH level. So the pH, if you remember back to school and science lessons, pH is the way that we measure how acidic or how alkaline something is. So the body requires a certain pH level for all of its chemical processes to work properly. So again, if you go back to science, if you've got chemical processes, you need the right environment for them to work in the way that you want them to work and produce the effects that you want them to produce. And the body's no different. So those chemical processes are what the body's using to keep us functioning, to keep us healthy. And as I said, it needs a certain pH level for that to work effectively. Now in the body, in most cases, it's around about 7.5, which in effect is slightly alkaline. So if the body is too acidic, those chemical processes can't work properly. The body struggles to keep us healthy. So therefore, our systems, our body will work really hard to maintain that correct pH. If the body becomes too acidic, it'll pinch vitamins and minerals, for instance, from other parts to counterbalance that. In particular, calcium from the bones, which, as you can imagine, is not good. So, what happens when we get acidic? Why is it such an issue? As I said, those chemical processes don't work, so that's the main thing. But there are other effects on the body if you've got acidic conditions there. So for a start off, the cell membranes are less responsive. So that means that your cells aren't functioning quite as well as they could. Your nerve endings are less responsive. And as you know, your nerves are one of the main communication systems in the body. The tissues become damaged. So those cell membranes can get so affected by this that the cells can actually start to die in a sense, and the tissues then become affected and damaged. So you're literally corroding from the inside out. That's not a very nice thought, is it? And the key thing, which is what I mentioned earlier, is that things like bacteria, viruses, parasites really like an acidic environment. They're attracted to that. So therefore, you become a lot more susceptible to it. And because of all those other things that I've mentioned, the body's less able to deal with them when acidity gets there. Sorry, when the parasites and bacteria get there. And therefore you start to develop symptoms and you start to become ill. So, obviously, you need to do something about that acidity. But when it comes to treatment, it's important that you approach this in the right way. So the analogy that's often used is to think of it rather like fish in a fish tank. So if you've got fish in a fish tank and the water becomes dirty, toxic, then the fish becomes sick. Obvious. However, if you treat the fish but don't treat the water, don't do anything about the water that's there, then nothing's going to happen. Those fish are going to continue to be ill and eventually they'll die. Well, your body's a little bit the same. Imagine the cells in your organs as the fish, and they're sitting in the fluids that are in the body, and it's the fluids that are delivering nutrients and taking the toxicity away. If those fluids are acidic, if they're not healthy, then there's absolutely no point treating the organs and the cells because you're leaving them in that dirty water. And therefore, they're just going to become sick again. So it's really, really important to deal with that acidic environment. Now, the reasons that you become acidic are things like toxicity, chemicals, pollution, stress can make you acidic. But one of the key issues, certainly for us in the Western world, is our diet. A typical Western diet is actually very acidic if you're not very careful. So high levels of complex carbohydrates, lots of sugar, processed food, fast food, all of those things have high levels of acidity. And if you're consuming a lot of them, then you're going to make yourself acidic. So what to do about it? Now, you know me, everything as easy as possible, common sense approach, quick, easy things that you can fit into your life without having to think too much about it. And acidity, dealing with acidity in your diet is no different. All you're aiming for is a nice, low acidic diet. And it's not rocket science. I'm sure you've heard me say this many, many times before now. Plenty of fresh vegetables. The fresher, the better. Fresh fruit, but not too much of it, because fresh fruit in itself can be acidic. Everything in moderation. Again, one of my favourite terms, everything in moderation. So fresh fruit, fresh vegetables in moderation. Try and avoid those refined carbohydrates, the sugar, the processed food, as much as you possibly can. Moderate amounts of tea, coffee and alcohol, so you don't have to go without that glass of wine, but note the word in there, moderate, everything in moderation. And one of my favourite things, drink plenty of water. So as you can see, it's not rocket science, it's not difficult to get that low acidic diet. And as I always say, 80-20 rule. As long as you're getting it more or less right 80% of the time, the other 20% doesn't matter. So that extra piece of cake, that extra glass of wine, or maybe that McDonald's, if you must, it really isn't going to matter that much as long as you're not doing it all the time. So what can you do today or this week, in the next few days, to actually create that low acidic diet? What little changes can you make? And as I always say, one small change is worth it. Every little thing you do is worth it, is going to make a difference. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's going to help you feel fabulous today and for the rest of the week. And I'll hope you join me next Friday for some more Fabulous on Fridays.